If the entire history of humanity were compressed into a 24-hour day, the Paleolithic era would occupy 23 hours and 58 minutes, while the Neolithic would just begin in the final minute. In between, just a few fleeting seconds, is a little-mentioned yet pivotal period, the Mesolithic. The term Mesolithic comes from the Greek words mesos, middle, and lithos, stone, referring to the transitional phase between the crude stone tools of the Paleolithic and the polished tools and agriculture of the Neolithic. However, not every region experienced the Mesolithic in a clearly defined way, and outside of Eurasia, the concept is not widely used. For instance, in China, most archaeologists classify the corresponding time as early Neolithic, skipping over the middle phase entirely. Chronologically, the Mesolithic varied by region. In Europe, the Mesolithic lasted from around 15,000 to 5,000 years before present, BP. In the Middle East, the equivalent phase, often called the Epipaleolithic, spanned from 20,000 to 10,000 BP, with the Natufian culture being a prime example. In Northern Europe, where post-glacial warming occurred more slowly, the Mesolithic extended until around 5,500 BP. The Mesolithic began after the end of the last ice age, 20,000 BP, and marked a period of major climatic adaptation. Melting glaciers caused sea levels to rise and drastically altered ecosystems across Europe, Asia, and Africa. Icy grasslands transformed into dense forests, forcing humans to abandon large game hunting in favor of small game hunting, foraging, and fishing. Therefore, the Mesolithic was not merely a middle phase, it was humanity's first social evolution laboratory. It was during this time that people learned to settle down, diversify their diets, and spark the first signs of creativity, laying the groundwork for the coming revolution, agriculture. Part 2, Tools and Lifestyle, a quiet revolution. At the end of the Ice Age, the herds of mammoths and bison, once primary food sources for prehistoric humans, began to vanish. Forests replaced open grasslands, small animals became more common, and humans were forced to change how they survived. Instead of depending on a few large prey species, they adopted a strategy of dietary diversification, eating fish, shellfish, chestnuts, even wild ducks. This shift sparked a major leap in tool technology. The invention of microliths, small, sharp, and versatile tools. Microliths were usually only 1 to 5 centimeters long, crafted by shaping tiny stone flakes and hafting them onto wood or bone to create arrowheads, knife blades, or fishing hooks. They were lighter, more replaceable, and more multifunctional than the crude stone axes of earlier times. Mesolithic people no longer made single-piece tools. Instead, they assembled modular combinations tailored to specific tasks. This showed a surprisingly modern, modular way of thinking for such an ancient era. At the Star Car archaeological site in England, researchers found dozens of composite microlith tools, as well as deer skull masks, suggesting that alongside hunting, ritual activities were also present. Not far away, at Silfolm in Denmark, a piece of blackened birch pitch with human bite marks revealed that a woman 5,700 years ago chewed tree resin, like gum, after a meal of chestnuts and duck meat. The Mesolithic lifestyle was no longer fully nomadic. Groups began building camps near rivers, lakes, or coastlines, where they had reliable access to fish, shellfish, fresh water, and building materials. Many sites show signs of occupation for months or even year-round, early versions of permanent villages. Besides stone tools, they also began crafting items from bone, wood, and antler, from sewing needles to fishing rods. Woven baskets made of plant fibers and primitive footwear, found in Cueva de los Murciélagos, Spain, suggest that textile-like skills developed surprisingly early, perhaps more than 9,500 years ago. Their menu was impressively diverse. In archaeological hearths, we find bones of carp, wild ducks, small deer, as well as shells, burned nuts, and even primitive ceramic cooking vessels. These were no longer societies living just to survive. They lived to adapt, innovate, and prepare for a new world. Part 4. Mesolithic Europe. When the ice melted, humans stayed. After the last ice age ended around 20,000 years ago, Europe began to warm. Sea levels rose, dry plains turned into swamps and forests, and humans adapted to this shifting environment. Mesolithic cultures in Europe didn't emerge in a single, uniform wave, but developed locally and diversely, shaped by the ecological challenges of their regions. In Northern Europe, the Maglemosian culture, c. 11,000 to 8,000 BP, stands out. Named after the Maglemos bog in Denmark, it has yielded microlithic tools, bows and arrows, bone fishhooks, and wooden paddles. Maglemosians lived in huts near lakes, hunted deer, fished, and specialized in exploiting wetlands, a food-rich but demanding environment. They were among the first people known to use dugout canoes. In the Baltic region, the Kunda culture, 10,500 to 7,000 BP, excelled in crafting tools from bone and red deer antler. They hunted beavers, seals, and water birds in brackish marshes. Meanwhile, at Starcar, England, dated to about 11,000 BP, archaeologists found 33 red deer masks, a wide variety of microliths, and a wooden platform beside a lake, evidence of seasonal settlement lasting months. Further south, the Azilian culture, c. 14,000 to 10,000 BP, in France and Spain, emerged after the Solutrean and Magdalenian periods. They used painted pebbles marked with symbols, likely employed bows and arrows, and may have pioneered abstract symbolic art following the decline of Paleolithic cave painting. A striking discovery at Warrenfield in Scotland revealed 12 pits arranged in a crescent, aligning with the moon's 29.5-day cycle. Dated to around 10,000 years ago, it's possibly the oldest known lunar calendar, indicating Mesolithic people tracked time, vital for seasonal hunting and gathering. The Ertebelli culture, 7,300 to 5,900 BP in Denmark, represents a blend of Mesolithic and Neolithic traits. They lived along the coasts, ate mussels, fish, and small game, and practiced ritual burials. Though they had pottery, they didn't farm or raise livestock. Some Ertebelli groups coexisted with Central European farmers for over 2,000 years. In short, Mesolithic Europe didn't vanish the moment agriculture arrived. For centuries, hunter-gatherers and farmers coexisted, competing, influencing, and eventually merging into new ways of life. Part 5. Art and Culture. When humans became the subject. If Paleolithic art celebrated wild animals, bison, lions, mammoths, Mesolithic art marked a turning point. Humans stepped into the spotlight. In Spain, the rock shelter of Roca dels Moros at El Cogul features one of the finest examples of open-air Mesolithic art. About 45 small human figures are etched into the rock, depicting scenes of hunting, dancing, fighting, and even ritual activity. The famous Cogul dance shows a group of women dancing around a central male figure, believed to symbolize gender identity or fertility rites. No longer a world ruled solely by animals, art now reflected human society. Beyond painting, Mesolithic people also sculpted. The Ain Sakri lovers figurine, Palestine, dated to around 9,000 BCE, carved from calcite, shows two humans embracing. It's the oldest known depiction of human sexuality, not pornographic, but symbolic of intimacy, connection, and community. In the Ural forests of Russia, the Shigar idol was discovered, a towering 5-meter-tall wooden statue carved with human faces and geometric motifs. Dated to roughly 11,500 years ago, it's the oldest wooden sculpture in the world, likely erected as a spiritual or ancestral symbol deep within the forest. At Starcar, over 33 red deer skull masks have been uncovered. Their skulls were perforated, reshaped, and likely worn like helmets, possibly in ritual hunts or shamanistic ceremonies, indicating an organized communal spirituality. Necklaces etched with geometric patterns, pendants made from amber and slate also found at Star Kar, hint at early symbolism, personal identity, and spirituality. Mesolithic art wasn't merely decorative. It mirrored how humans saw the world and their place in it. This marks a profound transition from instinct to symbolic thought, from surviving as animals to living as humans with imagination, belief, and purpose. Part 6. Pottery and Textiles. When fire met clay and plants became cloth. One of the biggest surprises of the Mesolithic is that pottery emerged before agriculture. While scholars once believed ceramics only appeared with sedentary farming, discoveries from Eastern Europe, the Baltic, and Siberia prove otherwise. In regions such as Ertebel, Denmark, Narva, Estonia, Latvia, Russia, and Zwifterband, Netherlands, Mesolithic groups crafted coarse pottery with pointed or rounded bases. These vessels were often undecorated but clearly used for cooking. Chemical and microscopic analysis of pottery fragments revealed burn marks, grease residues, fish bones, and plant starches, evidence that people used them to boil, stew, or steam food. This was a leap beyond roasting over open flames. Pottery in these contexts may date back as early as 9,000 years ago, such as those found near the Volga River and Lake Baikal. What's remarkable is that these groups were not yet farmers. They didn't grow crops or raise livestock, but they still made and used pottery to meet practical needs. This shows that technological and cultural innovations did not rely solely on agriculture. At the same time, hand weaving and textile craftsmanship were beginning to take shape. In Cueva de los Murciélagos, Spain, archaeologists discovered woven baskets made of seagrass, dating back about 9,500 years, along with plant fiber sandals dyed with natural pigments. Some baskets featured geometric designs, such as diamond and zigzag patterns, revealing early aesthetic awareness and design thinking. Though they had no looms or weaving machines, Mesolithic people already knew how to transform plants into functional and even beautiful objects, the earliest forms of applied art. When fire met clay and human hands wove natural fibers, it marked a quiet revolution, the transformation of nature into culture. Part 7. Mesolithic beyond Europe. Many names, one essence. Unlike in Europe, where Mesolithic is a widely used term to describe the post-Ice Age transition, other parts of the world use different classifications reflecting local climate, environmental shifts, and cultural trajectories. In China, the term Mesolithic is rarely used. Archaeologists typically classify sites as either Paleolithic or Neolithic. For example, Shanrendong Cave in Jiangxi Province contains the oldest known pottery in the world, dating back 20,000 to 19,000 years, yet the inhabitants were still hunter-gatherers. In China, pottery does not imply agriculture, and the concept of a Mesolithic isn't academically necessary. In contrast, India retains the term Mesolithic to refer to the period between 12,000 and 8,000 years ago. Key sites like Bagor, Chapani Mando, and Bhimbetka showcase microlithic tools, riverine settlements, and a gradual shift toward cultivating millets and wild rice, a precursor to semi-nomadic farming. In the Americas, the timeline is defined differently. In North America, this era is called the Archaic period, 8,000 to 2000 BCE, roughly equivalent to the European Mesolithic. In Mesoamerica, it's often labeled Meso-Indian. Despite the differing names, similar features appear: small-scale hunting, fishing, microlithic tools, and signs of emerging sedentism. In North Africa, particularly in Tassili and Adjur, modern Algeria, stunning outdoor rock art shows humans riding horses, hunting, farming, and performing rituals. Although today it's a desert, around 6,000 to 4,000 BCE, this region was once lush savanna, teeming with wildlife, inhabited by intermixed Mesolithic and Neolithic populations. In short, naming conventions vary, but the essence remains the same. After the Ice Age, humans everywhere faced dramatic environmental change, whether in Europe, Asia, Africa, or the Americas. They responded not with one solution, but with diverse cultural strategies, all aimed at the same goal: to adapt and survive. Part 8. The End of the Mesolithic. Not everyone wanted to be a farmer. Around 10,000 years ago, a sweeping transformation began spreading from the Fertile Crescent into Europe and Western Asia. This wave, what archaeologists call the Neolithic package, included wheat cultivation, livestock domestication, refined pottery, polished stone axes, and the building of long wooden houses for permanent settlements. But here's the twist: not everyone welcomed the change. In regions like Central Europe and the Balkans, many Mesolithic communities quickly integrated with incoming Neolithic farmers from the Middle East. They adopted farming, pottery making, and social restructuring. But in other areas, such as Northern Europe, with its forests, wetlands, and coastal landscapes, many groups chose to continue hunting and gathering for thousands of years after agriculture arrived. A remarkable example is the Blätterhole Cave in Germany. Genetic and isotopic analyses show that between 7,000 and 5,000 years ago, even as Neolithic farmers lived in the area, some individuals still lived a Mesolithic lifestyle, eating riverfish, game meat, and not cultivating crops. In one double burial, archaeologists found a hunter-gatherer man and a farming woman buried together, evidence of intermarriage and social blending between the two worlds. This slow transition wasn't just about tools or techniques. It reflected worldviews. For many communities, living close to nature, in freedom, hunting and foraging wasn't simply primitive. It was a cultural choice. Thus, the Mesolithic didn't end overnight. It faded gradually, intertwining with the Neolithic, coexisting for millennia, like a long twilight between two ages. And perhaps it's during this twilight that the first real cultural identity of modern humans began to take shape. Today, we are living through a similar moment of transition. As technology, climate, and society change at an unprecedented pace, no one can define what the future looks like. Like our post-Ice Age ancestors, we face a new world shaped by AI, climate change, pandemics, and a breakdown of traditional ways of life. So the question is, will you embrace the revolution, like the first Neolithic farmers? Or will you, like the people of Blätterhole, hold on to the old ways, surviving at the margins? There's no right answer. Both are human responses to change. But one thing is certain: understanding the past can keep us from getting lost in the present. If this gave you something to think about, don't forget to subscribe. Every week, we'll take you back to the turning points of humanity, where history wasn't written in ink, but in bone, stone, and ancestral memory. Subscribe so you don't miss the stories time tried to bury. Because sometimes, to understand the world of tomorrow, we must begin 3 million years ago.